Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the African Digital Financial Revolution. This event will focus on how promoting interoperable digital financial infrastructure can propel Africa into a brighter future by boosting financial inclusion, improving financial sector efficiency, lowering transaction costs, and facilitating cheaper remittances. It's essential to implement these in a way that ensures resilient safety, adequate privacy, and that promotes innovation, competition, and investment. Africa is different from other continents, both in terms of challenges and opportunities. This is, of course, a long and fascinating topic, but for the moment, let me offer a quick highlight via 3 numbers. Those numbers are 2/3, double, and 10%. So my first number is 2/3, and it refers to the access to the traditional financial sector. Yesterday, in the second opening event on this stage, Clay Chander mentioned that there are many unbanked people in Asia. This is even more true in Africa, where 2 out of 3 adults don't have a bank account. Yet, Africa is a resilient and dynamic continent. For example, it leapfrogged out of the traditional landline telephone technology, jumping straight into mobile phone communication. So that nowadays, the number of mobile phones in Africa is roughly the same as the number of adults. And this mobile penetration is allowing a digital financial revolution in the continent. To illustrate that, let me give you a second numeric example, the double. Indeed, the number of mobile money accounts among adults in sub-Saharan Africa is the double than the one in emerging markets or middle-income countries. Mobile phones are what people use to make payments, and so you can see the digital financial revolution in action. But of course, there's more to be done. So on these issues, let us now hear from our distinguished panel, encompassing top leaders, both from the public space and the private sector. We aim to focus, time permitting, on 4 questions, all related to the African context. The first question is about their experience in terms of promoting digital financial revolution and achieving those goals, like efficiency, inclusion, more influence and remittances, among others. The second question will be on how to overcome clearly the challenges. The third is about how to promote synergies between the public and the private sector. And the fourth one is about how to generate cross-border interoperability on national payments. And for those of you that noticed that I mentioned only 2 of the 3 numbers promised, stay tuned, and the third one is coming up in one of the questions. So with these brief remarks, let me give now the floor to Governor Addison from the Bank of Ghana. Governor, Ghana has been thinking about these issues for a long time. Ghana had a fast payment system for many years, then announced a plan for a central bank digital currency, the e-cedi, in 2018, launched the pilot for the e-cedi in 2021, and 2 weeks ago, your central bank just published a new e-cedi report. So, Governor, what is your experience and perspective in terms of promoting the digital financial revolution and achieving those important goals?
Well, thank you very much, Luca, for that question. As you said, the Bank of Ghana has been at the forefront of the inclusive digital finance agenda for a very long time. As far back as 2005, that is 20 years ago, the central bank set up the Ghana Interbank Payments and Settlement System. At the time, the focus was on the RTGS and wholesale interbank settlements. But we also, even at that time, had a retail payment instrument. This was the e-switch, which came in both offline and online mode, and therefore made card payments accessible to people who were in the very remotest parts of the country. Now, all of this happened even before the mobile phone revolution, which came 10 years later, sometime in 2015. The uptake of mobile phone in the country allowed the development of mobile money as a way of transferring value. And in there, the central bank again was, very key in developing that market. We came up with the electronic money guidelines, as well as the agents registry for mobile money. And then 5 years after the mobile money revolution, we also had the fintechs who were beginning to take advantage of changes in technology, and therefore a new Payment Systems and Services Act was passed, which allowed non-banks into the payments system space. Now that allowed non-banks to partner with banks in order to be able to provide payment services. At the central bank, we set up the Innovation, Fintech and Innovation Office, which took charge of this fintech era development and created the regulatory framework for fintechs and the licensing regime for fintechs, which allowed them to have different areas of permissible activities, ranging from dedicated electronic money issuer, and then we also had the category of enhanced payment systems providers. And we have seen a lot of very strong developments in the fintech space, and the central bank continues to create an atmosphere which would allow innovations, including the regulatory sandbox that we have put into place, which allows the fintechs to, in a sense, get a way of testing products that are being developed, and therefore gives them an environment in which they are not surprised that by the end of an innovation, they will find out that the product that has been developed is not fit for purpose. So this regulatory sandbox, I think, has been very useful in encouraging innovations by the fintechs in Ghana.
Thank you. So a wide set of initiatives, indeed. Governor Rwangombwa from the National Bank of Rwanda, over to you. Rwanda has been also very attentive to the digital finance agenda, and the country benefits from fast payment system, mobile money platforms, which are all well established. Would you elaborate on what initiatives can be put on the table to promote the digital financial revolution?
Yeah, thank you, Lucas, and good afternoon to you all. So it's true there's a lot of initiative that has been happening in our country and maybe led by the government itself to promote IT within the lives of Rwandans, but also as an engine for the development of the economy and the country in general. And maybe I was drawing on what is really being done concerning the digital financial services. But we are building on the ecosystem set up by the government and the private sector investors that has created connectivity across the country. So 95% of our country, you have 4G, access to 4G across the country, 4G network, and there's now, Rwanda has also subscribed to the Interlink, that now Starlink, that covers now the rural areas. So at least there is connectivity across the country. And built on that, there's now access to mobile phones that are used for digital financial services. And beyond people are being able to acquire the phones, there's been a program by the government and other stakeholders to make it easy for the population to have access to smartphones. So that helps really to use the digital financial services. So that's one. The key point is really access and access to reliable internet, but also having access to the gadgets. Then there is the regulatory framework to us as the regulator. We've created a regulatory framework that enables innovation, but also enables and supports innovation. At the central bank, we created a special department 3 years ago, that's 2021. We call it Financial Inclusion and Financial Sector Development Department, way beyond our traditional mandate of financial stability. And this department supports the initiatives by the fintech companies. We have maybe another factor that promotes digital financial services and other IT use is incubation centers across the country. So what we do as this department for the National Bank of Rwanda goes to where these fintechs are best, where they meet even financiers, and engage with them on what is expected as they join the market. They discuss the regulatory framework, But we've also been getting ideas from the fintechs themselves, and we've been improving our regulatory framework. Just recently, the government approved a fintech strategy. We approved a payments law, and building on this, our oversight and our regulatory framework is also improved. I think we've now revised our regulatory framework for the payment systems like 3 to 4 times since we started overseeing these services way back in 2011. Again, something that has really acted as a catalyst to this is a government decision to move digital in all their operations. So all government services are applied for and received online, and payment for any government service that has to be paid for is done using digital channels. So there's this ecosystem, what we are doing, we as regulators, the government and the other stakeholders to support. And the other key factor that we've invested in is on education, digital and financial education. So this department of ours works with the Ministry of ICT, is leading in this, and the other stakeholders to educate the population about the benefits of using digital financial services. There's what we call the cashless campaign, moving cashless in all our operations. And this has helped really to improve the uptake and use of digital financial services.
Thank you very much. Governor Njoroge, you spoke a lot about these issues on several occasions. You were former governor of the Central Bank of Kenya for 8 years, from 2015 to 23, and everyone in this field knows that Kenya is one of the leaders in mobile payments. Would you please share your views and your experience in the field of digital payments?
Thank you very much, Luca, and delighted to be here. Before going to this specific question about Kenya, I thought I should mention something about Africa, which is just to underscore that the world is becoming African. So that has to be the sub-theme for this conversation and other conversations. In terms of population, it's projected that Africa by 2050 will have more than a quarter of the world's population. And when you think about the youth, more than 35% of the world's population between 15 and 24 will live in Africa. That, to me, is the sub-theme of the conversation. But going to your specific question about Kenya, the way we look at this is underscoring that whatever we do, whatever the innovators do, it is to resolve a particular problem. So that has to be the first question we ask about anything. But since Kenya moved fast, meaning it is ostensibly the cradle of fintech, there are some things that we did that need to be dealt with, cleaned up. So that's really the first thing we are doing, or we've been doing for some time, backfilling regulations, for instance, on digital lenders, and also leveraging the playing field in terms of the fast entrants, making sure that actually they don't take too much advantage of their fast mover sort of position in terms of charges, etc. Secondly, similar to what they have in Rwanda, really the government is pushing its services online. So all payments to government need to be done online. We now have a very elaborate, let's say, ecosystem on payments. So the issue there is that's a gradual process, and the government is quite diligent in pushing it. And I think one of the examples of that is making or purchasing, investing in treasury bills and bonds. Now we can do that on our phone. Anybody from anywhere can actually subscribe, and that's a fascinating thing in terms of well, savings, availability to the population, etc. Thirdly, the government is also working on the last mile sort of infrastructure. So this is ensuring that in the various places the villages, the counties, etc., you do have connectivity through fiber. Now we have new system, Starlink, has plopped in our jurisdiction, similarly to Rwanda, and obviously people are taking advantage of that. But I think it is important to make sure that that is there. And then finally, the other project, if you want to call it that, the authorities are involved in is this cross-border transfers to make sure that to create a system with the other central banks, etc., that is fit for purpose. So those are the directions that I think I would want to highlight in terms of experience in Kenya.
Thank you very much for the broad set of points on great point on the youth and the need for broader services that cover them and help them leverage on their potential. Dr. Dosis, you're the president of the Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa area for Mastercard. You bring a very complementary perspective to the ones of the other speakers. And your company has been very active in technological advances related to digital payment in the region and globally. And Mastercard even offers, to my understanding, offline capabilities, which are extremely important for a continent like Africa, given the still limited reach of internet and mobile networks that has been highlighted by the previous speakers. What is your view on how to enhance digital finance in Africa, and how can innovative companies help nations in this journey towards broader financial access and lower costs?
It's a great question. First of all, let me underscore the world is Africa. That's an excellent way to think about this, and this is also what drives us as a company to push forward innovation. Listen, for us, DPI, and this is the baseline of your question, is a great thing. It's a good thing, but it's only a good thing if it's done correctly, okay? It's done correctly only if you take a step back first and see, what am I solving for? By doing investments, what's the problem I'm solving for? It's better to do that and then start thinking about how to get it done, which technology. So I think the best-in-class DPIs we have seen, and some of my fellow panelists here are going exactly down that route, is first do a discovery. Understand what am I solving for, understand the fundamentals. Do I have enough infrastructure? Do I have phone connectivity? Can I use Starlink? Can I use some of our Mastercard's offline capabilities on telephones to connect people without having, if you want, a connection directly online? That's number one. Number two is have principles. I mean, we need to think about principles. Interoperability, you mentioned it. We need to think about longevity. If I do a DPI, how do I keep it ongoing there? How do I operate it at the highest standards? I think that's very critical. It's very important also to think about value. It's one thing to say, you know what, I'm going to press the button and every of my inhabitants need to use this, but it's better to drive usage by value. The consumer, in this case, the inhabitant of your countries, needs to see the value and then they'll start using it. So once you do your discovery, once you have done your principles, I think then it is all about finding the right partner. And we all know geopolitics have not become easier. Okay, right? They're more difficult than ever. So I think now it's really about finding the right balance between owning an asset and having it operating in an efficient and effective way. I think that's probably what we'll see down the road, let's say the best in class doing. Listen, we as Mastercard, we have been invested in this continent since 50 years. We are since 50 years here. We have put a lot of technology on the ground. Our latest one is actually in South Africa. We have taken all our tech stack from the US, from St. Louis, developed it new, and put it for the first time in market, on soil, in South Africa, to operate in this country, but also across the continent. It's a global first. And this technology is so good that probably we're going to export it also into other markets. And let me also say that for the first time, with this technology, we're able to do real-time clearing, meaning that a merchant can get his money on the same day where transactions happen. So this is one form of innovation which I think will make financial inclusion real.
Thank you very much for sharing those thoughts. Let's now move on to another set of issues. You have all highlighted already that there are a substantial number of challenges in promoting this agenda. and such as technological, regulatory ones, and so on. And it's necessary to ensure that the system that is put in place has financial stability, resilience, safety, among many other characteristics. Would you like to pick like one or two challenges and maybe elaborate on those and maybe mention more briefly than we've done so as to can be able to reach other questions as well. Governor Rwangombwa, can I start with you this time?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lucas. Yeah, I think we touched the challenges in our first intervention. But as you said, let me take just two. One is on digital literacy. And I touched it in my earlier remarks, but this is one thing that we are all investing in to educate the population, because really uptake and use and taking full advantage of these digital channels, you have to be digitally literate. So this is one area there are still gaps. Government is seriously investing in that. We at the central bank, we are finalizing developing, let me call it an app, an education app, where the people will be logging in and they're able to ask different questions around financial services, and they get answers immediately. So it's and then we have other stakeholders that we are working with to support this digital literacy, improve on the digital literacy. That's challenge one, and what we are trying to do to address that challenge. Number two is cybersecurity. So we really investing and going digital and putting ourselves at risk of cyber attacks. So that is something that is also a big risk and challenge as we deepen the digital footprint across the country and in all our financial transactions. So there has to be strong measures to deal or to support cybersecurity. So at the national level, we of course, starting with the regulator, we have clear cybersecurity regulation that issued to the financial service providers that we enforce as a regulator. But beyond that, we've invested into a finance security operation center. It's like an umbrella that covers the financial system that is able to track cyber threats and communicate to the different financial service providers. And on top of our umbrella, there is the national umbrella now, the ESOC, the National Operations Center for Cybersecurity. So it is a challenge, a real challenge. And with cybersecurity, it's not just about the systems, it's also about the people now. We are again investing a lot in educating and making our people aware of the challenges and risks associated with the cyber attacks. So maybe let me stop there on these two. So, and this, the other one is really something that it maybe can easily be overcome. But with the cybersecurity, yesterday I was in another, 2 days ago, in another discussion where, as we know, in fact, yesterday, I think Ravi here, when he was presenting what they are doing, he was showing the challenges of now the rouge characters, the cyber attackers, using AI to encrypt messages. So as we improve in our technology, the rouge characters are even improving maybe much faster than us. So that's a challenge that we really have to face. Thank you.
Thank you. So financial education and cybersecurity are top challenges. Governor Njoroge, on your side, what are the top one or two challenges you would like to highlight, and what can be done about it?
Thank you. Briefly, first challenge was with the, let's say, the operators who, for whatever reason, did not quite appreciate the role of the regulator. And in a sense, the regulator was seen as this sort of anti-innovation sort of entity. So that was a big challenge, and I think we've overcome that. I don't think today there are people that subscribe to that very much. The second one is connectivity. And as you can imagine, we do have we have population all over the country. So it's one thing to have, cell phone masts and things in the main cities. It's another to reach out to everyone in the country. And I think that is something, so the infrastructure in terms of fiber cables and other sort of high-speed internet availability, I think that is a challenge, but it's a challenge that has been identified. Finally, for me, a big challenge which still exists is the gadgets are still very expensive, very expensive. I made this case some time ago that we need to get a $5 smartphone. I mean, if we can go to the moon, we are going to Mars, we are going to all sorts of places, but we cannot get a $5 smartphone. I think we've lost it. So that's a challenge which I throw to the audience, and I look forward in the next few months or years to see that phone somewhere. Maybe the next Singapore FinTech Festival.
Thank you. So the de facto trade-off between regulation and innovation, which will be overcome, connectivity infrastructure, and all of you heard, if you can propose a $5 smartphone, you will help Africa and many other countries as well. Dr. Dosis, what are your key views on main challenges, maybe your top one or two?
So I think it's about stability, right? And I'll consider it as a stool, a three-leg stool, and you need all three legs to keep it a little bit stable, otherwise it will fall. The first one is interoperability, and this is mission critical, okay? It's the one thing to do it within a country, which I think many of my fellow panelists have achieved, but then it is, how do you do it across the region? I mean, imagine a Kenyan guy with an M-Pesa wallet going to South Africa, to Cape Town on vacation, and wants to pay at an MTN shop. How do you create interconnectivity between an M-Pesa wallet and an MTN point of sale? That is critical. And then the last point, which is critical, is to keep that interconnectivity also live on the roadmap. Think about it. Everyone does his own product roadmap, and then after 1 or 2 years, those things are not speaking to each other again. So I think this is one key pillar of the stool that we need to get right, interoperability. The second one is about trust, and you mentioned it, Governor, in terms of fraud, how to use AI to prevent all those things. Just to give you a figure, last year, our company, using AI fraud prevention, has saved $30 billion in fraud. This is happening every day, so we need, as an industry, to be behind it. So that's the second leg of the stool. And the last one, and a very important one, is actually a level playing field. You need to make sure that wherever we operate, that there is competition. It's good to have options for the consumer to be able to choose and have the ability to go after different options. I think those three things, if we get them right, I see those public-private partnerships be very successful.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So interoperability/interconnectivity, creating trust and preventing fraud, and level playing field. Very important point. Governor Addison, what would be your top two challenges?
I think most of the challenges have already been mentioned. I think that the issue of infrastructure is key, making sure that connectivity is available, and it's important to have that stability in having access to networks. Another one which has been mentioned, but I look at it more at the domestic level, the issue of interoperability. Even at the domestic level, you could have, payment systems that are not talking to each other, and try to get interoperability among different types of payment infrastructures domestically is important. In Ghana, we've been able to get interoperability between our mobile money systems and the bank accounts, as well as some cards. So that, I think, is also important. A major challenge in our part of the world is the issue of identity. Fortunately, this has been a major policy objective of the government. We have a National Identification Authority that has dealt with the issues of identity cards in Ghana, which aids in all the KYC issues associated with financial inclusion.
Thank you very much. So infrastructure and connectivity, then interoperability, and then identification and helping the know your client process. Excellent. I think we heard a lot about interoperability, so maybe in the interest of time, let's jump straight to that particular topic of our conversation here. What do we mean exactly by interoperability? It's the ability to connect smoothly payment system across countries. And this is extremely important everywhere, of course, but in particular in Africa, where remittances are only by now the major source of capital inflows, and trade and financial integration within Africa still remain weak. And here, let me mention the third number, the 10%. So the cost of transferring money across countries in Africa can easily reach 10%. It can even get to 20% when it was between two African countries as opposed to between one African country and someone outside of the continent. And we know that the target of the UN Sustainable Development Goals is 3% by 2030. So the point is, how do we get there? So Dr. Dosis, can I start with you this time?
Sure. It's a great question. I don't have the exact answer. I can just tell you one thing, that connectivity is only the beginning to drive financial inclusion. We were all very much into financial inclusion. But financial inclusion is only there if you add value to it. And how do you add value? You add value by doing exactly what you said, making sure remittances, which is a big issue in our continent of Africa, get cheaper. That's the one area where we need to focus on. We as an industry, what we are doing is we're trying to make those connections more efficient, make them more real time, as I said. I think this efficiency for sure will contribute to also bringing down the cost of remittances. But there's also the other angle, which I'm very keen on, which is how do we bring SMEs into the financial inclusion play? We don't have them today. We as Mastercard committed to bring 50 million SMEs into the ecosystem by 2025, and we're on a good way there. To make this happen, we need to provide value, we need to provide credit scoring to them, and this is, I think, an area where you will see us double down as an industry.
Excellent. Thank you. Governor Addison, will you share your thoughts?
Yes, I mean, the issue of interoperability, cross-border interoperability, it's an important one in Africa in order to improve the AFCFTA, which was launched recently and aims at boosting trade within the continent. I think the issues are many in terms of the obstacles towards that objective. In particular, the issue of different regulatory regimes across different jurisdictions, and the importance of harmonizing, regulations across countries. The issue of identification, which I raised earlier on. Not all jurisdictions have proper identification systems in place, which in a sense exposes the system to issues of the cyber security risk and fraud and all of that. So there is a need to harmonize regulations across African jurisdictions with a view to getting our various payment infrastructure to talk to each other.
Thank you. Governor Rwangombwa, you spoke recently during the annual meetings about this topic. What is your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Lucas. I think my colleague has said it. It's key that we are able to link our systems, our retail payment systems. As said, it's a necessity. It's not really a luxury. So what we are trying to do, we've started engaging with our colleagues in the Bank of Ghana to see how can we be a catalyst to this across the continent to link our mobile payment systems. So as Governor Ernest said, of course, one is the regulatory regime, harmonizing our regulatory regime, and if an operator is in Rwanda and easily linking with an operator in Ghana, we are all confident that there will be no issues of AML, CFT, and all that. So at least we're able to speak to each other. So that is very key, that we work together to make it easy for our mobile financial services to talk to each other. In the East African region, our GSMs are talking to each other easily. So when I move from Rwanda to Kenya, I use my mobile phone like back home. They call it home and away. Is it home and away? Yes. It's so easy to link the mobile phone. So building on the same principle, we can also link the mobile financial services. Though this involves movement of money, it's not as easy as just movement of voice, but we have confidence that this is going to happen. There's an initiative by the Afrexim Bank under the CFTA umbrella called Pan-African Payment System. They started with a wholesale solution, not yet fully operational to our satisfaction, but they say they have now developed a switch that can link the payment system. So as we are engaging to see how we can unblock this, maybe if what they're saying is real, then we can have a technology solution that can help us to achieve this sooner than later. But we are committed to that, and I'm sure we as central bankers, if we lead as regulators, to be easy for the service providers to plug in and start playing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as we run out of time, Governor Njoroge, briefly, what would be your thoughts on interoperability?
Okay, so very briefly, I would want to just say that the problem you raised about high cross-border or the transactions, the cost of those transactions, really we should look at it from the point of view of, let's say, the monopolies that are there in those channels. And we are thinking more from the global north to our countries. So we need to work in that space. It's not the only monopoly cartel, if you want to call it that, with all due respect to Mastercard and others. But I think the point there is it's not a technology issue. It's one of how the businesses are organized and what we let go in terms of those businesses. Secondly, just to make it clear that there are more pressing issues in my book that we as people in the jurisdictions are working on. And I think the most pressing one is this one of financial health of our people, our citizens. And I think there has been a very powerful statement that was made earlier on this platform. So I want to make the point that interoperability is important, but we also need to look at other important issues as we resolve them.
Thank you very much. And with those words, let's thank our great panelists. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.